Nigeria Governors Forum dispatches a delegation to visit President Muhammadu Buhari in the United Kingdom.
Use your tenure of office to meet the yearnings of the people. Acting President Oshibajo challenges political office holders.
The responsibility that privilege and power place upon us is to do our utmost to change the current bleak narratives and projections for our nations and our continent and the world.
Three tiers of government share 652 billion, 229 million naira for the month of July.
And Good Morning Nigeria today focuses on the response to hepatitis, the silent killer disease.
And almost 4 decades after the introduction of IVF, what are the successes, challenges, and prospects of this medical science? Well, HIV/AIDS is unarguably one of the most highlighted viral infections in the world, and Nigeria, which has received tremendous publicity, funding, and has to a large extent been demystified and contained.
Well, Blessing, while I agree with you on the assertion, I guess that the major concern should actually be on a lesser known and often seldom publicized viral disease that medical experts say is perhaps more deadly and has a higher prevalence rate than HIV. I'm here referring to hepatitis. Quite
right, Kingsley. Hepatitis, which is simply referred to as an inflammation of the liver due to the presence of toxic substances or infections caused by protozoan parasite or viruses, is said to affect over 400 million patients worldwide, with over 1.4 million deaths recorded.
Now, according to the Federal Ministry of Health, Nigeria is among countries with a high burden of viral hepatitis. Now, with both hepatitis B and C prevalence rates standing at 11% for hepatitis B and then 2.2% for hepatitis C. In other words, this translates to roughly some 20 to 24 million Nigerians said to be living with the disease.
Now, this is the most worrisome aspect. According to the Society for Gastroenterology and Hepatology in Nigeria, at least 1 in every 10 Nigerians is a chronic carrier of hepatitis B, and WHO is most undiagnosed, with not only the risk of liver diseases and death, but also the risk of transmitting it to others ignorantly.
Now, who are those persons that are more at risk of the infection by this silent killer disease, whether it is hepatitis A, B, C, or whatever it is? Now, those at risk, the experts say, includes persons who practice unsafe sex and have multiple sexual partners, and those who share personal care items such as toothbrushes and razor blades, and of course, persons who share needles or other drug-injecting devices, and then of course unsafe blood transfusion and perhaps included in this will also be transmission from mother to child, among other likely sources of transmission.
Quite right, Kingsley. Now, the question to ask, what is being done to arrest this silent killer and contain it before it does the irreversible damage to Nigerians? We've assembled experts to interrogate the matter, even as Nigeria prepares to mark the 2017 World Hepatitis Day, which is on July the 28th.
Well, Blessing, today appears to be a day we are dedicating to health matters. As our second topic looks at the issue of procreation, which began in 1978, when the first known human being, Louis Joy Brown, was born through in vitro fertilization conception or IVF, and of course this took place in the United Kingdom, and it's opened doors to thousands of couples around the world who had been unable to conceive.
Kingsley, yesterday actually marked a 39th year since this medical feat was achieved, and the technology has since spread across the world with over 5 million test tube babies delivered globally and about 4,000 born in Nigeria via this medical feat, which is the vitro fertilization process, otherwise known as IVF.
Also known as test tube
baby.
Now, almost 4 decades later, how safe is this procedure? And how has it impacted families, particularly in Nigeria? And in particular also, what is the success rate of those who seek to embrace it? And how affordable is it? Are there still objections to this form of conception? And what is the training and regulation of the practice of IVF in Nigeria?
Well, these questions, as well as others that are bothering you about this process, are some of areas that we'll look into with experts in Nigeria who will join us in the course of the program. And in the course of this program as well, on this edition, we'll bring to you our companion segment, which by now you know we'll have the newspaper review, we have business, sports, foreign, as well as entertainment news. My name is Blessing Abu. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
And I'm Kingsley Osadola. I also join Blessing in welcoming you to the midweek edition of the program, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. So wherever you're watching from around the world, we welcome you once again to the program. Right now, my colleague, Blessing Abu, will also take you through the morning news. Blessing?
Sure, Kingsley. Welcome to the news page. Acting President Yemi Osinbajo will today swear in the 2 new ministers already confirmed by the Senate at the start of the Federal Executive Council meeting. According to a tweet by Laolu Akonde, Senior Special Assistant to the Acting President on Media and Publicity, the ministers are Stephen Ocheni from Kogi State and Suleiman Hassan from Gombe State, who were nominated by President Muhammadu Buhari in March to replace late James Ocholi and Amina Ibrahim at the Federal Executive Council. A delegation of the Nigerian Governors Forum is scheduled to visit President Muhammadu Buhari in the United Kingdom this Wednesday. The special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Femi Adesina, who announced this at a media briefing, said the chairman of the forum, Governor Abdulaziz Yari Abubakar of Zamfara State, is leading the delegation.
The visit is a goodwill visit and nothing more than that. I believe that Nigerians in various positions had yearned.
It's the right time to visit the president because the news is that he is recovering and recovering well. I'm sure you are aware of a letter he just wrote to the African Union chairman.
Acting President Yemi Osinbajo wants elected political office holders to effectively use the tenure of office to meet the yearnings of the people, urging them to shun unnecessary wranglings that could slow down their assignments. The acting president, while declaring open the 16th Commonwealth Speakers and Presiding Officers Conference, African region in Abuja, reiterates the need for the elites to brace up in solving the challenges confronting humanity, especially Africans.
The leadership positions which we occupy is a short lease that Providence and the electorate have given us to shape the present and determine the future of millions and the generations that will be born to them.
Senate has started clause-by-clause consideration on review of the 1999 Constitution. National Assembly correspondent Waziri Ziyano said items from the report have earlier been adopted by the joint session of the committees of both chambers of the National Assembly.
There was no age limit assigned to councillors, those running for councillors in Nigeria.
If you really want an Attorney General to be independent, and you believe that that office must be independent, you must give them first-line charge.
This is a review that will bring about much more better budget process, better local government administration to strengthen democracy at the state level.
Still with the National Assembly, the House of Representatives has passed for second reading a bill for an act to amend the Federal Highways Act, which seeks to increase fines prescribed under the act to ensure due process.
Remember the issue of the Shiites and the military in Zaria. We know what that cost lives.
And that what you are trying to do is even a component part of a bill that has gone through the second reading of the House.
The Joint Senate and House Committees on Police Affairs have engaged the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, on the incessant cases of kidnapping along the Abuja-Kaduna Highway. National Assembly correspondent Dennis Adegunloye reports that the IGP is the first among other security chiefs expected to appear in the coming days.
All know that this is not a road leading to a hinterland or something. This is a dual carriage road. Not many people can fly because of the cost.
Sort of put our heads together on how we can improve police services.
We will continue so that we come out with a clear-cut solution and even other areas of situation.
Security is a priority of any responsible government. And I believe me, before the week runs out, you will see a change.
And the federal government has raised alarm over an orchestrated plot to discredit the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, and by extension, the government's anti-corruption efforts using 419ers and their ilk. In a statement, the Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, said this Presidential Advisory Committee on the corruption letterhead and stamp, as well as the signature of its chairman, are being forged and used to con people within and outside the country. In a particular instance, a letter purportedly signed by the chairman, Professor Isesage, entitled Presidential Investigation on Outstanding Federal Government External Contract Debt, and a form to be filled for that purpose are being sent to unsuspecting persons to extort money from them and to portray the country's highest advisory committee against corruption in bad light. The statement adds that the president has not mandated this body to investigate and recommend for payments on outstanding contract debt, as contained in the letter in question. Neither has the federal government approved the disbursement of about $850 million in the 2017 budget for payment of the so-called external contract debt. Federation Account Allocation Committee meeting, the sum of 652,229 million naira was shared amongst the three tiers of government. The Accountant General of the Federation, Idris Ahmed, disclosed this to newsmen after the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee meeting. Musa Abubakar reports the gross statutory revenue of 575,504 million naira for the month was higher than the 317,562 million naira received in the previous month by 222 million naira. The gross revenue available from the value-added tax was 81,645 million naira. That's the news. Good Morning Nigeria continues in a short while with me and Kingsley after the break.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Many Nigerian children cannot afford to go to school because they live in poverty. Instead of enjoying education and its benefits, they get involved in street trading to help themselves and their families survive. The Rogers Foundation is a humanitarian organization which currently caters for over 15,000 less privileged children in various schools all over Nigeria. The foundation has a goal to take thousands of less privileged children off the streets and provide them with free quality education from secondary school to the university as part of her Vision 2030. Admission forms are free and available online and at all Rogers Foundation colleges at Owerri, Jos, Ibadan, Kano, Enugu, Sokoto, Yola, Bauchi, Zaria and Oboko. For further details, visit www.rochersfoundation.org. Rogers Foundation, we educate to empower.
Happier by Chivita. Burst of refreshment.
House of Chi.
All right, you're welcome back. Now it's time for us to take some business news as the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank has voted to maintain the status quo, just as the Securities and Exchange Commission warns capital market operators against non-payment of taxes. Our correspondent, Kolo Mohammed, tells us more about these stories.
The Securities and Exchange Commission, through a circular, informed all capital market operators of its readiness to appropriately sanction any operator and public limited companies who default in the payment of tax. This circular followed the executive order issued by the federal government on voluntary assets and income declaration. The Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) encouraged all taxpayers in the capital market to comply with the new executive order before the expiration of 9 months grace period as specified by the federal government or face penalties accordingly. And at the end of its 257th meeting, fourth for this year, the Central Bank of Nigeria Monetary Policy Committee (MPC) voted to maintain status quo. The committee considered developments in the global and domestic market since its last meeting, including headwinds confronting global growth and tightening monetary stance in the U.S., downward trend in global inflation, volatility in the global crude oil market, slower contraction in the domestic economy, continued drop in domestic headline inflation rate in June, noting the still high food prices, which the MPC expects to moderate in the third quarter of 2017, and lastly, relative improvement in the forex space, heralding stability of the average Naira exchange rate across various segments of the market. The equities market continued its upward trend on Tuesday to maintain over 1 week of bullish trend. Up ahead is a graphic summary of the closing figures from Tuesday's trading. That's business news. Good Morning Nigeria continues shortly.
Thank you very much, Kolo Mohammed. Up next on Good Morning Nigeria is a newspaper review segment.
Our newspaper reviewer, Baya Tobe, is right here with us for today's edition of the program. Baya, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy the early morning downpour.
Yes. In fact, it's very alarming. The weather report I saw yesterday, only Maiduguri, Yola, and Jalingo are not expected to have rain. So you can imagine the deluge all over the nation.
Oh, no,
Good morning, Blessing. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, but it stopped raining now. You know, it's on the way to the studios this morning.
At least in your own part of the city.
Yes, it's all dried up, and of course the drainages are flowing as we indicated yesterday. So let's begin our review this morning. As to be expected, the stories on the front pages, of course, have to do with the presidency, in particular President Muhammadu Buhari, and all the issues surrounding his current state of health, as well as the visits by prominent Nigerians, including governors. Let's begin by taking a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. But that's the lead story for Punch. It's also the lead for other papers that we have this morning. Let's go straight ahead to the Punch now, and then you see that that's the lead story. Says why Buhari is receiving governors and others now. And the story is attributed to the presidency with the rider. 7 APC and PDP governors meet president in UK today. Details of the story can be found on page 7. Now, an earpiece, two earpiece copies beside the nameplate. It says high-profile fraud cases. EFCC, ICPC not cooperating with AGF, says 8. That's high-profile fraud cases. ICPC, EFCC not cooperating with AGF. AGF stands for Attorney General of the Federation. And FARC allocates 652 billion to federal government, states, and local governments. Above the nameplate, you have 3 headlines there. We can't progress with 1999 Constitution. That's according to Akonde, former governor of Osun, and also a leader of the APC. Now, Oshibajo may swear in new ministers today. Others are affirming that indeed the swearing in will take place. Details of the story can be found on page 10. And Nigeria needs strong fiscal and monetary policies to exit recession. That's attributed to the CBN. Details of that story can be found on page 23. Now, you have other stories there, just on the right-hand column below the headline, below the lead headline. It says Abuja, Kaduna highway kidnapping embarrassing Nigeria. That's according to the Senate. Abuja, Kaduna highway kidnapping embarrassing Nigeria. Details of the story can be found inside. Plateau confirms fresh outbreak of Lassa and dengue fever. And attacks FRSC to prosecute Abia Speaker's wife and others. Kaduna communities record 2-year uninterrupted power supply. That's according to the federal government. And of course, we have a story that is running there on Desiane and how she allegedly lavished $100 million on some items. Yes.
All right, Kingsley, for the story on the president, the blueprint is leading with this caption. I'm getting better. This is credited to Buhari. And there is a quote from him, I'm making good progress, and as soon as doctors advise, I shall return to my duties and continue serving the Nigerian people who elected me. There's a writer to that, Fayose Wike, out of NGF delegation to President. Fayose is a governor for Ekiti State, and Wike is the counterpart in Rivers State. But just above that, you have other headlines. National Open University students' population hits 400,000 with a rider 354 prison inmates on the list. Page 6 will give you greater details. Kidnappers kill 18 police informants in Kaduna community. Page 13 is giving us that story. Nigeria not among 10 most corrupt nations, first time in 16 years. This survey done by the United Nations as captured on the front page there. But you'll find details on page 14. Senate finally passes Peace Corps bill. Oshibajo to swear in 2 ministers today. Pages 5 and 8 will let you into fuller details. Army promotes 6,199 Boko Haram fighting soldiers. Page 13 will give you greater details. Now, at the foot of the page for blueprint, you have this admonition from Acting President Yemi Oshibajo. Oshibajo to leaders, don't waste your tenures on conflict and divisions. Find that detail on page 6. The story about the president still, it's on the front page of the Vanguard. That's the leading for the Vanguard to getting better, Buhari writes Guinean president. As 5 APC, 2 PDP governors meet him in London today.
Yes, the letter you referred to was written to President Alpha Conde of Guinea, and in that letter, President also indicated that he has accepted as to lead the anti-corruption fight of African Union. This was part of his letter of appreciation to the President of Guinea, who had organized a nationwide prayers in Guinea for President Muhammadu Buhari's recovery and good health. He said, "It is a gesture that I will forever cherish and treasure." President Muhammadu Buhari was nominated as leader of the 2018 AU theme on the fight against corruption at the 29th session of the Heads of States and Government of the African Union that took place on 4th of July. Meanwhile, delegation of the Governors Forum, 7 of them, are scheduled to meet with President Muhammadu Buhari 3 p.m. today, as indicated by the media advisors to the president. In fact, the 3 of them addressed a press conference and gave an indication of it, describing the visit as a goodwill visit. However, there are conflicting reports. Some papers are indicating that the president has indicated that his return to resume duties at home is subject to his doctor's advice. However, Daily Trust reports specifically that he quotes a presidency source, "We have been told to be on standby for his return next week. Everything is in place now for that." So anytime from now, the president is expected back. Meanwhile, there's concern about the rate of kidnapping on the Abuja-Kaduna Express Highway that is not abating. The Senate said the situation is embarrassing, and the Senate leader had addressed the Senate that in a meeting of the both committees of House of Rep and the Senate with the Inspector General of Police, he did indicate that 600 personnel and 90 patrol vehicles have been deployed. However, the Senate and the House of Reps said this is not enough because there are no results. So yesterday, another operation, codenamed Operation Absolute Sanity, exclusively designed to end that menace on the highway, has been sent as a reinforcement. It has also been observed that most VIPs now traveling along the Kaduna-Abuja highway prefer to use the train shuttle between Kaduna and Abuja because they are running away from the group and individual kidnap. Meanwhile, persons described as informants to the police who have made some successes in arresting some of the persons suspected to be kidnappers have been assaulted and killed. In fact, 18 of them have been killed. This is a development that the police will have to take seriously because it will affect the information they are getting as regards the menace of the kidnappers.
Well, how did the kidnappers get to know who the informers were? There's a very
there's a question. Yeah, exactly.
And that's, as the senators were saying on the floor of the Senate yesterday, the plenary, I mean, the Kaduna-Abuja highway or Abuja-Kaduna highway is a dual carriageway. This is not some road that is hidden in a bush path. So why is it so difficult to police and flush out the kidnappers? I mean, these guys, they're having a free rein. And when the Abuja airport was shut down for repairs, the runway was shut down for repairs, of course, you had proliferation of security
so ambulances.
Everybody's going to sleep.
It became almost a model that was said it will be deployed across the nation. Yeah. Meanwhile, 2 minister designates, Professor Stephen Lawani and Suleiman Hassan, are expected to be sworn in when the Federal Executive Council meets today.
All right, very quickly, let's a couple of other stories from Leadership Newspaper and Daily Trust. We've already taken the Daily Trust story. The lead for Daily Trust has to do with the speculation by them, according to president sources, of the president returning next week. And then below the nameplate, lawmakers differ as voting on constitutional review begins today. And then you have a window of headlines at the foot of the front page. 2 of them we'll take very quickly. Many fear dead as Boko Haram ambushes troops and oil prospectors. That's on page 4. And train services dipped by 80% over Lagos-Kano suspension. And for the Leadership Newspaper, it says Oshibajo seeks end to executive legislature brawl and says feud robbing citizens of democracy dividends, and our role misconstrued. That's according to Saraki. An active president swears in ministers today. Of course, the other stories we have, Bayo has already discussed. Rep Someone Nema boss over 13 billion naira expenses paid for.
Right. On the side, when Vanguard has a picture story, that's the one I'm just going to take. A building collapses in Lagos again. Rescue workers and sympathizers at the collapsed four-story building in Lagos yesterday. That's what you have on the front page of the Vanguard.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yes, in fact, it's reported that one person has died, and so far about 16 persons have been rescued. The four-story building collapsed about 2:30 in the afternoon, and it was said that only 2 weeks ago, a telecom mast was mounted on that story building. Meanwhile, following the concerns about flood, the Lagos state government has given warning to shanties and obstacles around Obalende area that all those who have them there will have to evacuate. Otherwise, in the next 48 hours, they will be demolished. Earlier on, they had been given 6 months' notice to evacuate those places, particularly those that are on the sewage ways and gutters that are now the obstacles for flood. 42 Chibok girls who escaped from Boko Haram in 2014 have now graduated. They were in schools in Plateau and Katsina states. Also graduating were 31 other internally displaced girls who also benefited for the training.
All right, Maya, thank you. That's the much we can take for this review this morning. See you again tomorrow.
Tomorrow will be another day. Thank you.
Good morning, Nigeria. On the network service of the NTA, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with health issues. Hepatitis, another silent killer. The other one, very well known, of course, is hypertension.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. No be only to connect lights. Come you and yourself now. Now wow. Oh boy, calm down now. Oga Kasali electrician, who will they look for with this? Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, letting him talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from over.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Chivita Active Fruit Juice, unique quality blend of 6 citrus fruit juices. Want to dance? Chivita Active. Be active. Do more. Get more out of life.
House of Chi.
All right, now not much public attention is focused on hepatitis, and despite, of course, its prevalence in Nigeria and the fact of it being referred to as a silent killer. Our correspondent Ngozi Chude with the background report tells us more about this disease as a prompt for our discussion this morning.
The World Health Organization, in its latest report on hepatitis, identifies the disease as a grave public health threat which requires urgent response. This is due to the fact that in 2015 alone, the viral disease killed 1.34 million people globally, rivaling HIV and tuberculosis. Hepatitis is considered a deadly disease as it majorly affects the liver, causing it to fail in the pivotal support it renders to the body. Hepatitis can be acute or chronic depending on how long it lasts in the body. Though some causes include heavy alcohol use, certain medications, toxins, infections, autoimmune diseases, and non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, otherwise known as NASH. The most common cause of viral hepatitis is said to be found in 5 different viruses, which include A, B, C, D, and E. While some hepatitis infections have no symptoms, others develop yellow discoloration of the skin and whites of the eyes, poor appetite, vomiting, tiredness, abdominal pain, and diarrhea. Over time, it has been observed that types B and C can trigger liver cirrhosis and cancer if untreated.
The liver is a very vital organ in our body digestive system because everything you eat or you drink must pass through your liver, including medicine. So we need to take good care of our liver so as it can stay healthy and do its job.
On the other hand, hepatitis B, which is common in Nigeria, is spread through bodily fluids, while hepatitis C is primarily spread through blood. The most worrying part of the disease is that over 20 million Nigerians have viral hepatitis, with less than 5% having prior knowledge, a situation the Minister of Health, Professor Isaac Adewale, says needs immediate attention to create awareness. Experts have also raised concerns over the alarming spread of the disease, which they say is due to lack of awareness among those infected and poor hygienic practices. Lack of access to testing as well as treatment, which leaves millions of people at risk of a slow progression to chronic liver disease, cancer, and death, is also worrisome. No doubt, the silent killer disease is prevalent in Nigeria, and consequently, medical experts have called on the federal government to declare hepatitis B a health emergency, as it did with HIV and AIDS. Few days to World Hepatitis Day, Health watchers believe it is another opportunity to add momentum to all efforts in eliminating the disease. How will this discourse be escalated to get the desired impact? These and more will be the focus of Good Morning Nigeria shortly.
Thank you very much, Ngozi Chude. Now to discuss this issue of the silent killer, which hepatitis B is now been known. We have guests here in the Abuja studio, as well as other 2 or 3 of our studios across the country. First, we'd like to welcome in Abuja studio, Dr. Chukwuma Anyanke. Is a consultant public health physician, head Prevention National AIDS and STIs and Viral Hepatitis Control Program with the Federal Ministry of Health. Dr. Ayake would like to welcome you to the program.
Thank you.
Also in the Abuja studio, we'd like to welcome Dr. Rex MPAZANJE, is a HIV hepatitis advisor with the World Health Organization Nigeria Country Office. Dr. MPAZANJE, welcome to the program as well.
Welcome.
Kingsley, we have other guests join us from other studios.
Yes, you already indicated that we're having guests from some of our network studios. First, we'll go to our Ibadan studios, where we have Dr. Olufemi Olowokere. It's a consultant family physician at the University College Hospital, Ibadan. Dr. Olowokere, a pleasure to have you join us on the program this morning.
Welcome.
All right, and then from joining us from our Benin Network Center, we have Dr. Kasmaya Omwemo. Dr. Omwemo is a consultant gastroenterologist at the University of Benin Teaching Hospital, as well as the National Secretary Society for Gastroenterology and Hepatology in Nigeria. Dr. Omwemo, a pleasure that you are with us on the program this morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, let's begin the conversation with Dr. Chukwuma Anyanke, of course, who is Head Prevention National AIDS, Sexually Transmitted Infections and Viral Hepatitis Control Program of the Federal Ministry of Health. Dr. Anyaike, let's hear from you what the issue is, as it were, with hepatitis in Nigeria, and where we stand in terms of either rate of infection, rate of prevalence, fatalities. Is hepatitis really a threat to public health in Nigeria?
Yes, thank you. Viral hepatitis is really a public health threat globally and Nigeria especially. The preliminary study we did in Nigeria showed that the prevalence of viral hepatitis B is 11%, and that of C is 2.2%. So when you put that in a population of almost 180 million, you're having not less than 20 million people living with viral hepatitis B or C in the country, and that is a very, staggering number in terms of disease burden in the country. And one thing about viral hepatitis is that most people do not even know that they have it. The statistic is there, and even the ones that have it have issues with getting the appropriate care. So in the country, we are putting in measures to make sure that the policy makers and the people in the government know that there's a problem, and then for adequate action to be taken on the control of the prevalence of viral hepatitis in the country. And also it runs in the same way, because even globally we have a very embarrassing data of almost 1.4 million people dying of viral hepatitis, or the complications on a yearly basis. And so when you put that, compare that with that of HIV and TB, you understand that it's really a very big issue. And if we have that staggering amount, and almost 90–95% of them do not even know they have the disease, and the thing keeps spreading in the community, that means at a very long run, you will have a lot of people dying, and it affects people at the productive age from 20 to 40 years, and you know what it means, in the economy of the country and the productivity of the country as a whole.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Anyaike. Now, before we bring in the doctor from that's World Health Organization, Nigeria Country in Office, let's go over to Ibadan studio, where we earlier introduced Dr. Olufemi Olowokere, consultant family physician and geriatrician with the University College Hospital in Ibadan. Dr. Olowokere, now, there is a saying that what you don't know doesn't kill you, but this time around, being not knowledgeable about this or symptoms or forms of transmission is actually giving the people the silent death. Where do we stand in the terms of knowledge and awareness to this program in solving it?
Thank you very much. The mere fact that you don't know about the disease is like ignorance of the law. Excuses nobody. Unfortunately, both the health worker and even the sufferer of the disease seems not to be taking very serious look at it. As a family physician, I can tell you that most times when we screen patients, when maybe for pre-employment purposes, or maybe they want to go on insurance, or they want to go into school, or they want to travel out to some countries, and they're required to do some of this investigation for medical report purposes, and you screen them. Many of the time, you tell them, oh, you have hepatitis B positive, and that you need to go for further tests. Many of them are alarmed. They just looked at you as if, what is going on? What is happening here? I've had patients that we had to see like that on further investigation, discussing with a fellow colleague who is a gastroenterologist, having a conference, and we had to commence treatment. And so the mere fact that one does not know about the disease does not excuse the fact that the complications are there. And just like has been rightly said, most times when people present to us, and you get them, and you now tell them that these are the modalities of treatment, some people, unfortunately, when you go for further tests, they can't afford it. I have some patients who will tell you, oh, I can't afford the treatment. Even the cheapest of the treatment, they tell you, no, I can't afford it. Some of them are still in the community, and educating them, letting them know that even this disease that you are talking about is worse or dangerous, even more dangerous. If I put it at 3 times, even more dangerous than than the HIV that everybody clamor about. Unfortunately, we've relegated it to the background, and it's a silent killer.
All right, Dr. Lowokere, thanks. Let's also bring in Dr. Omwemo from our Benin Network Center. Dr. Omwemo, well, what do we know about patients who are presenting themselves for treatment? Does a patient come and it's, well, of course, there will be diagnosis if there's hepatitis, but is hepatitis an opportunistic ailment, or it's an ailment that presents itself on its own? And if so, what are we seeing in terms of stats and data? Because according to Dr. Anyeke here, if you have an 11% prevalence rate, that really will be alarming. So 24 million Nigerians with this ailment.
Thank you for that question. Seriously, we have a very major problem with hepatitis, both in Benin City and in the nation. If you look at it in a more practical form, if you are standing on the road, out of every 10 people that pass by you, at least one of them has it. And out of those people who have it, they don't know it. They're busy transmitting it to others without even being aware of it. The primary problem here is that the disease does not present itself very early. By the time you find out that you have any symptoms like the yellowness of the eyes, abdominal swelling, and co. that were mentioned earlier, the disease has already gone very, very far. In fact, to the point that you can't even cure it anymore. At this stage, you're really just trying to make the person survive for a bit longer. You're no longer really likely to cure the person. The target for treating these patients is to test them while they are still very healthy, while they are apparently, there's no evidence of the infection at all. If they are tested at that point in time, we can actually treat them and cure them. But unfortunately, most people don't go for routine tests, and so we end up not even getting them at that stage. The treatment is extremely expensive. In fact, it's the best kind of treatments cost in the range of 2.5 million naira for the 1-year treatment course. Of course, there are cheaper alternatives which are less effective. And so you can imagine the impact of this on the average Nigerian, who probably doesn't earn up to 2.5 million in almost his lifetime, not to talk of spending it in 1 year.
Well, still with you, Dr. Omwemo, let's take a look at this. Assuming, according to the experts, 1 in every 10 Nigerian, is harboring this ailment. What are the causes? What is the trigger for it? Because you hear all kinds of things. People tell you, for instance, if you, those who take what is called supply water, gin and all kinds of things, they can damage their liver. Is it alcohol is it excessive intake of alcohol that weakens your liver and then predisposes you? Or what is the source of the virus?
Thank you for that question. Really, the virus is transmitted from person to person. In our environment, it's most commonly transmitted from mothers to children at the point of childbirth, and also from children to other children while they are playing in school and co. It's transmitted in a very similar way as HIV is transmitted, through any body fluid and blood. So anybody with whom you share any sharp instrument, for instance, razors, injections, needles, and even something as innocuous as the needles that are used for sewing attachments on for ladies' hairs. You find that if that pricks somebody and gets infected, the next person who that gets in contact with is very, very likely to get infected. And particularly noteworthy about this virus is that it's a very, very strong virus. It can survive even in the dried form for up to 3 months and still be able to infect somebody. So one must exercise extreme care, particularly when you may be exposed to sharp objects that may be used on somebody else. It really has nothing to do with alcohol consumption. Although alcohol damages the liver on its own, we also have a lot of unorthodox medications being used that damage the liver. These damage the liver, but they don't cause hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is caused by a virus that is potentially curable.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Omwemo. We'll come back to you. Now let's bring in Dr. REX MPAZANJE, the WHO, is HIV and hepatitis advisor for WHO, and of course is right here in Nigeria as in the country office of WHO. Dr. MPAZANJE, what do we know about hepatitis? First, from the WHO perspective with regard to Nigeria versus the prevalence rate elsewhere on the African continent. What are the manifestations?
So hepatitis, I think from the WHO point of view, is really the new frontier for us to deal with infectious diseases. The first report that WHO has produced has been this year. So in other words, even at the global level in terms of programming, it has been silent for quite some time. And WHO, based on the World Health Assembly, last World Health Assembly, where a resolution was passed, WHO has decided to increase the momentum at controlling hepatitis. So what we know globally is that hepatitis is a truly global disease, unlike, for example, HIV, which we know it's mainly affecting one continent. So it's a truly global disease. All the continents are affected. There are differentials, however, in that really hepatitis B is the commonest here in Africa. And it's the disease that affects most of the countries, and indeed in Nigeria being one of the most affected countries. So in terms of what we really needed to do is that we have the instruments for managing hepatitis. And if we apply all these instruments, we should be able to control the disease. First and foremost, we have quite effective preventive measures, from measures of making sure that blood is safe, at least making sure that those injections given in hospitals are safe, to vaccination, which is in two forms, the penta vaccine and also the birth dose. The birth dose, as I indicated, prevents the mother-to-child transmission, because during childbirth there's likely to be transmission, but if you get the birth dose to the child, then it prevents the hepatitis from developing. And we also have now treatment for both hepatitis B and hepatitis C. So all these instruments are available now, and that's why I think looking at from the WHO lens, we are trying to increase the momentum to make sure that countries take on board all this range of interventions and start dealing with hepatitis as a public health problem that really the world and Africa in particular in this case should be able to eliminate by 2030.
All right, Dr. MPAZANJE, we've set the table straight that usual transmission is from mother to child, but those are the highest risk of this in between childhood and perhaps adulthood, and where do we find this prevalence more around, especially from your reports gathered for Nigeria?
So the prevalence is actually in the reproductive age group. That's the highest prevalence that we find across the countries in Africa. As indicated, the transmission largely is from mother to child. So those who were especially born before vaccination of hepatitis, in other words, largely our generation and other older generation, we are the generation that silently we may have hepatitis and we are living with it. The generations that have come after vaccination was introduced are being protected, although at the moment not complete because the vaccination coverage is still low. But the expectation is that if the generations that are coming, we increase the vaccination coverage, then we can protect those newer generations and worry more on the older generations that didn't benefit from vaccination. I should also add to say vaccination is also available for adults, but you need to first of all rule out that they are already infected in order to vaccinate them. So that's really the sort of picture that we are looking at in terms of those who are mostly affected at the moment.
All right.
When you say that vaccination is available for various populations, I'm wondering, why isn't there as strong a campaign as we have with regard to hepatitis versus, for instance, what you have for polio? You know, I mean, I don't think, what is it, why is it that there hasn't been increased public awareness for persons to get vaccinated against hepatitis?
The public awareness is there, but probably it's not at the same level as polio, in the sense that before now, I think before this year's sort of resolution on World Health Assembly, hepatitis was not for elimination, while polio was for elimination. So for polio, the world was doing everything possible to make sure that they eliminate it as quickly as possible. But now that we are also putting hepatitis for elimination by 2030, we expect that we'll also galvanize exactly the same efforts to make sure that we can move forward with the interventions for hepatitis. So the vaccination is available. It's part of the routine vaccination, and all children are supposed to be vaccinated in infancy with the birth dose at birth, and then pentavalent vaccine, which contains 3 vaccines, including hepatitis, that they are supposed to receive 3 doses. So that vaccination, if all children receive that vaccination, they will be protected against hepatitis B.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. MPAZANJE. Now, let's get back to our Ibadan studio. Dr. Olowo Okere, let's find out from you accessibility as well as affordability for this in treatment of persons who have come to UCH and indeed that axis of the country.
Thank you very much for the question. Talking practically now, most patients that we see, that are having this infection, after further investigation, just like I said, most of them, you pick them when they come for routine investigation, or they just want to travel, or they want to do insurance or pre-employment, and you pick some of them that are hepatitis B positive, and you now inform them, oh, you will need to have some further investigation to be able to know whether we are going to treat you or not. And in the process, some of them will go for further tests. But one thing that we observe is that even the further tests, serological tests that we need to do, some of them can't even afford it. But the few, maybe the rich, or somebody who has a relative who can support them, in the process, having explained how dangerous this disease is to them, they get further tests and we start treatment for some of them. But I want to say that most patients, can't afford it. Even the cheapest of them, just like we have said earlier on, we have various modalities of treatment, and the very effective ones runs into millions, and the cheaper ones are not even that are not so expensive. Many of them can't even afford it. But one of the things that we discover is that when it comes to the issue of marriage, maybe some of them wants to get married, and some religious institution will tell them, oh, you have to get this test done, and we pick some of them also in the process, maybe because of the marriage issue, some of them will have to source for funds to be able to get treated, so that at least when they are viral load, we explain to them, where you need to do some viral load, you need to do some other tests, and so that in the process, we'll be making sure that at a particular point, you can get married.
Dr. Olowo Okere, we talk about cost for investigation, which would be like lab tests and so on and so forth. What figures are we looking at?
Well, currently, I might not be able to say specifically what the cost is in terms of Naira and Kobo, but one thing I know is that recently in my institution, the CMD had made a lot of effort to bring on board, a kind of, in which we'll be able to do most of these viral studies to be able to help some of these patients. We have also the public-private partnership. We have also the lab where we have a virology lab where some of these things can be done. But the point I'm making here is that whatever, we are the receiving hand. By the time you send them for the test, they come back to inform you that, oh, doctor, I can do this, but I might not be able to do this, And when you now partner with your gastroenterology colleague, and we now take a decision, and we discover that, you see, there is very little you can do when you don't have all this investigation on your table to be able to take a decision, So this is just the point. So affordability is still an issue. And I would say that until we, just like it has been rightly said by the WHO man, that we must come to the level in which we declare it a national emergency. Once we do that, I can assure you that, you see, we will be able to take good care of many of the patients that we are getting. We can say that we see them when they have not come down with some of these, all the symptoms we are talking about. By the time they are having jaundice, abdominal swelling, and all the, already going down, which at that time might be very late. But we pick them most of the time when something can still be done. And some of them that can afford the treatment are doing wonderfully well in the society. And in fact, having known all the do's and don'ts of the disease, many of them are doing wonderfully well. We've had opportunity to screen their families, and the ones that, most of them that are not positive, we encourage them to go for vaccination, and there are many of them are doing well. So in terms of affordability, I will still say that the government need to come into place here. We need to declare it a national emergency. In the process, we'll be able to help quite a lot of these patients who have just gone. Some have disappeared. You will see them only once. Some of them, you see them only twice. And just like I said, the one that wants to get married are not likely going to disappear like that, because they want to make sure that that marriage takes place. So I think the government here must come into play to declare it a national emergency, to be able to support it. It's either that we make sure some of this investigation free, just like when you test a patient with hepatitis, with HIV, and we need to come do something pragmatic with this, because it's a silent killer. Many people, just like has been rightly said, when they have it right from childbirth, which is the vertical transmission, which is the commonest, and most of the time, 70%, over 70% of them will go chronic once they acquire it from childhood, which many a time, the ones we are seeing, if we look at it, many of them have actually acquired it from childhood, because by the time we do their viral load, it just runs into millions. And so such people could have been, could have had a vertical transmission, but for one reason or the other, they are not coming down with symptoms. But by the time they are going to come down with symptoms, some of them, it might be too late, which eventually some can develop cancer from this. And so that is why I'm advocating that the government should look into it critically, and if possible, the way we have dealt with guinea worm, the way we have dealt with polio, can we also look at it? The way we have dealt with HIV, can we also look at it from that angle?
Very much, Dr. Olo-Okere. The question is coming back to Dr. Anyike now. Really, what we've been able to do with HIV/AIDS in terms of counseling, in terms of awareness, campaign and all of that, seems not to be the case with hepatitis B, or perhaps it's not enough. What exactly is the ministry doing to actually address this key area of awareness campaigns, as well as taking a look at pre-treatment counseling for those already affected who have come forward or discovered because of coming for medical attention?
Yes, what the government has done is, first of all, to create that awareness. And in doing that, you need data. The government came up with the data to say there's a problem. The next thing it did was to set up a control program, came up with a policy. That policy was presented at the National Council on Health, which is the highest decision-making body in the country, for the states to adopt that and to establish viral hepatitis control units in all the states. Don't forget that health is on the concurrent list. So as the federal government is doing its work in work of coordination, policy formulation and enforcement, the states will have to key in, because the man in Abuja cannot tell the commissioner in Abia State on his priority. But if you have the data to say that this is the issue, then you'll be able to use that data for advocacy for resource mobilization. So the federal government has taken that bold step. We've come up with the guidelines. We've come up with a 5-year strategic plan. This was launched last year. And now, part of what we are doing now, this awareness creation, to make sure that the country, every person in the country, and it's not even the government alone. There is, there should be a public-private partnership. And that has been effective right from the inception. We formed a technical working group that's involved even the people living with the virus, the pharmaceutical companies, the government, the line ministers, even the press. Everyone is involved. So what we are doing now is to create that awareness that people should know that there is this issue. Because as a prevention expert, if it will cost less to prevent an infection than to cure it. Because we have a lot of issues now, the cost of viral load and monitoring the patient and error. So we feel that this awareness comes first, and then for the various governments to make conscious effort of putting, a much fund for viral hepatitis. To control viral hepatitis is even easier than HIV because it has the vaccines. Once we put up all these interventions in place, it will be able to come down to a bearable minimum.
What is the vaccination program of the government at the moment?
Yes, like where the WHO counterpart has said, because 90 to 95% of viral hepatitis that run to chronicity comes from mother to child. The first thing, if you want to eliminate or reduce the burden of an infection, is to get at that stage, and that is why we've put up the robust, immunization mechanism to make sure that every person, every baby that comes from must have that vaccination. And to increase that, we have to now make this awareness, because in some cases, not just those in the urban area, those in the rural areas may not even be able to get the complete, vaccination. If you don't get the complete dosage, you are not likely going to have that coverage, that immunity for you to, to get not to get the infection or even to run to the chronic state. So first of all, the government has put in mechanisms to make sure there's a wider coverage of immunization, especially for the infants. And then the very important aspect of is the bad dose. That one that the baby must take within 24 hours of delivery. That is very important for the prevention of that baby having that virus.
How available are these ones across the country?
Yes, the National Primary Health Care Development Agency is part of our, a major stakeholder in the control of viral hepatitis. And it's doing its work to make sure that in fact, every primary health care center should be able to give that pentavalent vaccination. Then going forward, for those at the reproductive age, the call for every person to know the status. Go and test yourself. If you are negative, you go for that vaccination, which is a very good way of preventing the infection.
All right, Dr. Ayake, thank you very much. Let's go back to our Benin Network studios where Dr. Kashma Omoemo is still there. Dr. Omoemo, well, we've heard from you, the experts. You talked about viral hepatitis, hepatitis B. We also hear sometimes about hepatitis C. Now, how many types of hepatitis are there? Are there some that are not viral? That's the first question. Next question, some of the symptoms that have been, the experts have also touched on, yellowing of the eyes, protruding tummy. Some persons might say, well, what are the symptoms of yellow fever, for instance? Is there a nexus between yellow fever and hepatitis, viral hepatitis? And then what is the connection? Is HIV also into all of this? Because HIV, AIDS, of course, would arise, we were told, if there are opportunistic ailments. Will hepatitis B trigger AIDS, and so on and so forth? Let's take these questions.
These questions are actually very critical at this time. I'm glad you asked them. To start with the last one first, comparing HIV and hepatitis, the truth is that these two viruses are actually in the same class. They are both called retroviruses. So you find that some of the medication we even use for treating HIV is also used in managing hepatitis B. For instance, tenofovir and lamivudine. These are drugs that you may have come across. So you find that these drugs are similar. However, when we talk about hepatitis, the broad term hepatitis basically just means an inflammation of the liver. And this can be caused by so many things. It can be caused by toxins like poisons, insecticides, pesticides generally, alcohol, like we mentioned before, and even drugs. Drugs as simple as paracetamol, particularly if taken in overdose. Now, that is the non-viral form of hepatitis. The most common form of hepatitis in our environment, however, is still viral. Like they mentioned in the introduction, there are 5 of the most well-established viruses that are called hepatitis virus because they target the liver only. And of course, hepatitis B is the most common of all of these. Now, there are other viruses that also target the liver. All these viruses called the hemorrhagic fevers, things like Lassa fever, yellow fever, and co. They also affect the liver, but the liver is not their primary target. That is why they are not really called hepatitis viruses. However, they do affect the liver. They damage the liver, causing the same yellowness of the eyes that you would get in a case of hepatitis B. They also cause the same bleeding disorders that you will get in very severe cases of hepatitis B. So that's where, along the line, you may end up mistaking the symptoms of one disease with another without, unless one has the benefit of having the proper testing facilities to differentiate them, particularly in the very severe cases. It's also very important to know that just because someone has one virus does not mean he cannot have the second virus. Like we have a number of cases of HIV and hepatitis B co-infection. In fact, sometimes you find a couple, the husband may have HIV, the wife has HIV and hepatitis B, or vice versa. We also find co-infection with several of the hepatitis viruses. Typically, hepatitis D is found only in the presence of hepatitis B. Hepatitis D cannot exist on its own. It must be present only when hepatitis B is already there. You may also find cases where you have hepatitis B and C and HIV all in the same person. And these present a very serious diagnostic and treatment challenge because of the cost and the side effect profile of the drugs that are used for these patients. We also find a situation where people who have hepatitis are also taking drugs that damage the liver. And this accelerates the whole process. Now, looking at the symptoms, we talked about yellowness of the eyes, which is jaundice. That is evidence of the liver not being able to eliminate bilirubin, which is a normal toxin produced in the body from breakdown of blood that has basically outlived its normal lifespan. And if the liver is not functioning normally, this tends to accumulate in the body and is seen outside as this yellowness of the eyes. And if somebody is a very fair complexion person, the yellowness will also be visible on the skin, the palms, and elsewhere. You also find other symptoms like swelling of the abdomen and swelling of the legs because the liver is not able to produce protein, and therefore the body accumulates water. It's not able to eliminate it the way it should. So these are typical symptoms of liver disease. However, these also are shared by other disease conditions. So this highlights the importance of proper diagnostic facilities to be able to make sure that we can diagnose it properly and early. We find also that a lot of situations like liver cancer doesn't really show itself. It's not really evident until it has advanced to the point that it is untreatable. So usually by the time the person presents with abdominal swelling and pain in the area of the liver, by the time he presents with those things, the liver is already virtually almost entirely damaged. And so such a person doesn't really stand much of a chance of treatment in terms of the current treatment facilities available in Nigeria and worldwide. However, if proper screening is done, like my colleagues have already mentioned earlier, the target here is get these people before they become symptomatic. Testing, screening of the general population is extremely important. And I'm glad that the federal government has been able to put in place some strategies. There's this Rapid Results Initiative that's spearheaded by the Minister of State of Health. And I know that in selected teaching hospitals in the whole nation, there's provision for testing of the general population for hepatitis B. I also am aware of a lot of private companies and philanthropic agencies that have supported hospitals and other groups to test populations for this disease. The Society for Gastroenterology and Hepatology in Nigeria has also been in the forefront in organizing some of these things in conjunction with donors. We also find, too, that some religious agencies have also been very, very receptive in assisting in doing the testing. However, these efforts are not enough. A clear nationwide program to test everybody, particularly those who have not, who are not beneficiaries of the vaccination program for newborn children. It's extremely important that something of this nature is done so that we can catch them and treat, and also prevent further spread by vaccinating contacts and educating them on how it's spread. If this is done, we will actually reduce the transmission of this condition.
Dr. Emoemo, thank you very much. Quickly, still with you to at least get this off our hearts. Now, the issue of to consider in terms of caring for those already infected, supporting them, as well as health practitioners. Of course, we will not forget in a hurry what happened in 2014 when the issue of Ebola scare came into Nigeria. So, in handling this risk by potential carriers of hepatitis B, how do we? What are those issues to consider in supporting them with care, as well as the health risk from health workers themselves?
Yeah, that is a very, very sad situation, because you find that a lot of healthcare workers themselves are unfortunately rather ignorant about hepatitis B and have not taken steps to protect themselves by getting vaccinated against hepatitis B. The normal routine day-to-day work of a healthcare worker puts that person at a very high risk of being infected with hepatitis B, from simple blood spills on the skin and other more extreme things. In the process of surgery or administering injections to a struggling patient, you may actually get punctured by a needle that has passed through the blood of an infected person. And if such a health worker is not already vaccinated, he stands a very, very high risk of coming down with the disease. We also have the other position too, where you may have a health worker that is infected and doesn't know about it and proceeds to infect a patient unknowingly when he or she gets injured, and the blood from this health worker gets in contact with the patient. These are real situations that have unfortunately presented themselves over the years. Now, there are strategies for dealing with post-exposure cases. Someone who's just been inoculated with the virus from a sharp object that was infected with blood. There are drugs that you can give for a period of time that would actually prevent the person from getting the disease. Like our colleague mentioned earlier, there's this drug that can be given as an injection immediately after childbirth to children of mothers who are infected with hepatitis B. That same injection, called hepatitis B immunoglobulin, can also be given to people who have experienced a recent exposure to hepatitis B virus, usually within 24 hours, to achieve maximum effectiveness. This is important. But on the other hand, we have to look at it from a more critical point of view. Healthcare workers themselves have to be tested, and not only at the time of employment, but they have to undergo routine testing, periodic testing, to ensure that they are negative. And you also have to undergo testing to ensure that the vaccine is still, that the state of immunity of the person is still very high. In some situations, you find that someone who's vaccinated, he remains immune for a period of time, but after about 10 years or more, you find that he may not, his immune system may not be able to handle the hepatitis virus the way it did initially. So such a person will require a booster dose. Now, this
Oh, shame. That's, that's Dr. Kasma Mwemo, consultant gastroenterologist at the University of Benin Teaching Hospital, as well as National Secretary of the Society for Gastroenterology and Hepatology in Nigeria. Dr. Mwemo, thank you very much for your contribution. We, of course, look forward to seeing you some other time. There are a number of issues to raise further still. We have another guest we're bringing in from our Sokoto network studios. For instance, I mean, how do you care for your liver, and what should you avoid or do if you're already down with hepatitis B. But otherwise, Dr. Mbembe, would like to thank you for your insights on our program this morning.
You're welcome.
All right, now let's go over to Sokoto Network Studios, where we have been joined at this time by Dr. Sirajo Haliru Tambuwal. Dr. Tambuwal is an infectious disease specialist and fellow of the Medical College of Physicians. Dr. Tambuwal, we kept you on hold. You know, when the skies are busy with traffic, sometimes that's what happens. You'll take your time on the queue. But it's our delight that you'll be able to join us at this time. Dr. Tambuwal, thank you very much. And straight away, let's get your views with regard to what we are saying, say, in your area of jurisdiction in terms of the manifestation of viral hepatitis, as the experts have discussed. And is there anything that is unique about the manifestation in those areas? And are there ways that treatment have been handled successfully and affordably?
Like my colleagues earlier said, hepatitis B viral infection is endemic in sub-Saharan Africa and in Nigeria. It's no different with the situation in Sokoto State here. The prevalence for hepatitis B is quite alarming, it's quite high. I will just want to say that among blood donors, the prevalence is about 15% for hepatitis B and is about 1.6% for hepatitis C as of last year, 2016. And also among children with sickle cell disease, you find a prevalence of about 17%. Now, this study compared children with sickle cell disease with healthy children, and they found a prevalence of 10%. Now, this is alarming because children with sickle cell disease are exposed to, recurrent blood transfusion, and that means we have a problem here with blood transfusion. Probably the transfusion of improperly screened blood is a problem. As for the clinical manifestation of the disease, like my colleague earlier pointed out, that it presents with right hypochondral pain, abdominal swelling, and yellowness of the eyes, diarrhea, vomiting. It depends on that is the end stage. When there is abdominal swelling already, most of the patients we see here, they present with liver damage. Most of them present at the end stage with liver cirrhosis or even hepatocellular carcinoma. But it's unfortunate that most of these patients, most of the patients we see in clinic, some of them that have come to do screen and regular medical checkup, most of them do not have liver damage. But like my colleague said, because the treatment is not quite affordable, and also here in Sokoto, sometimes like viral load, we recently, it's not long ago that we have facilities for viral load. Most of the time we send patients as far as to Kaduna and Abuja to do viral load in the range of 15,000 to up to 30,000 naira. And if you know Sokoto very well, you know there is the socio-economic status here in Sokoto is quite low. And patients go as long as to Abuja or even Kaduna to do viral load, if not for recently that we have the facility. Now, these patients cannot afford to go multiple times, to do this viral load on several occasions, because you need to monitor these patients with the infection. You need to monitor them, and you may need to request for the viral load maybe every 3 to 6 months. So you see, it's a bigger problem. And if you come to the treatment, the drugs used in the treatment are also quite expensive. The best of treatments are quite expensive. And it may range from, depending on the choice of treatment, the interferon is quite expensive. It may range from up to 50,000 to 75,000 naira in a month. So imagine you have to spend about 75,000, 50,000 a month for injection. And you may have to treat the patient for 6 to 12 months if you are using that modality of treatment. So it's not quite affordable here. Most of the patients are lost to follow-up. Like my colleague earlier said, this disease may resemble other illnesses like viral hemorrhagic fever, but like he said that the hepatitis B virus primarily targets the liver, while this other illness, the liver is just one of the systems that is affected, and clinicians are quite versed in differentiating the two. It can be quite confusing, but after some laboratory tests, it can be clearly differentiated.
All right, that's Dr. Sirajo Haliru Tambuwal, an infectious disease specialist, joining us from our Kaduna Network studios.
So,
I apologize for that. From our Sokoto Network studios, because he had also mentioned Kaduna while he was speaking, so that's stuck in my head in terms of the places that patients have to visit from Kaduna. We'd like to thank you for your contributions and, of course, the points that you have made in further boosting the views raised by your doctor colleagues on the program. Our appreciation also to Dr. Olufemi Olowokere, who joined us from our Ibadan Network studios as a consultant family physician, and right here with us in the Abuja studios, we appreciate Dr. Chukwuma Anyaike. Chukwuma Anyaike is a consultant public health physician, and of course is a director, head of prevention of the National AIDS Sexually Transmitted Infections and Viral Hepatitis Control Program at the Federal Ministry of Health. And also our thanks to Dr. Rex MPAZANJE, it's of the WHO Country Office, and is HIV and Hepatitis Advisor. Dr. MPAZANJE, thank you very much for your contribution to our discussion this morning. We'll take a short break now. When we return, another health issue, 39 years since the first test tube baby was born.
Happier by Chivita. Burst of refreshment.
House of Chi.
Baby, please now.
School days are not for marrying. Marrying on campus in a marriage that is not a marriage.
Is she married? Which marriage?
An ill-timed union that breeds domestic violence, use, distractions, and heartbreak.
And if she graduates and leaves me here, I will take another wife.
You're what my father would call a Rolling Stone shenanigan.
Do not shoulder responsibilities of married life before it is time. Professor John Bull, Episode 2, Season 4, Campus Marriage.
Waiting with this now, Now hear me, they choose your destiny.
Oh, yeah, bring two.
Which one?
That one like your Gaki leg, and that one like Udo's forehead. Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network. Glow Unlimited.
If you just tuned in, the program is Good Morning Nigeria, and we have a second topic still on health. 39 years ago, a breakthrough was recorded in medicine with the conception of the first baby by in vitro fertilization in the United Kingdom. Today, that miracle baby, Louise Joy Brown, is herself a mother of 3 and is regarded as the firstborn of the IVF family. While the world commemorates this feat, correspondent Lydia Samson has been examining the impact of this medical wonder in the lives of Nigerians, particularly women who hitherto suffered tremendously on account of being considered barren. Let's join Lydia with our report.
After trying to conceive naturally without success for 9 years, Leslie and John Brown opted for other procedures, as Leslie, however, had been diagnosed of blocked fallopian tubes, making it virtually impossible for her to take in. On 10th November 1977, Leslie Brown underwent a little-known procedure developed by Patrick Steptoe and Robert Edwards, which was later to become known as in vitro fertilization, or IVF for short. This procedure opened the floodgate of hope for millions of couples and intending mothers across the world. The story of Ugochi Okewe is similar to that of Leslie Brown, but becomes more interesting when told in Nigeria's socio-cultural setting.
Ugochi Okereke is 48 years, 8 months. She got married at the age of 45, and like any other woman, the search for a baby began. And because of age, she knew time was not on her side.
IVF is not just a substitute, but it's a miracle given to us by God. And because of the knowledge that He has given to doctors and nurses, it has become a very successful story for me.
Nigeria was quick to key into this medical wonder with the first breakthroughs in Lagos and Abuja.
The pioneers of this technology in the country were not really selfish. So they were able to, pass this in across, because some of us are beneficiaries, because I work with Ibrahim Wada for quite some time, and virtually all the acts I learned in IVF I credit to him, sending me abroad and to gain knowledge.
Out of 10 persons, at least 4 families are able to be happy. And by the time those remaining 6 repeats again, maybe another 2 or 3 we get again.
Although Ugochi is among the few lucky women who could afford IVF, many others appear shut out in spite of the fact that Nigeria has over 200 IVF centers due to high cost.
Most of the people that are undertaking IVF now are most likely above average and the rich. Even the average finds it difficult.
The good news is that more institutions, including government hospitals, are coming on board to make IVF reasonably affordable, even as the technology is improving daily to jack up success rate.
But patients are coming forth that even the number of IVF cycles done today is by far greater than what used to be done in the past. So that's a good thing.
Opposition to the IVF procedure is also subsiding as awareness grows and testimonies of women like Ugochi becomes more and more available within the society.
All right, thank you very much, dear Lydia, for that elaborate background there. Of course, one of the doctors who was referenced by the interviewee in that background report is right here with us in the studios. Is one of the very well-known experts in this field, Dr. Ibrahim Wada, of course, recipient of the National Honor of OON, that's Officer of the Order of Nigeria. He's the Executive Vice Chairman of Garki and Nisa Hospitals here in the Federal Capital Territory, as well as being Vice President of the Association for Fertility and Reproductive Health in Nigeria. Dr. Ibrahim Wada, a pleasure that you are with us in the studios.
I'm so delighted to be here, very happy.
You can see, you can feel it. And in our just studio, we have Dr. Kenneth Ekuda. He's of the Ghaneville Hospital there, right there in Jos. Dr. Ekuda, thank you for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you so much, and good morning, Nigeria.
Welcome. Okay, Kingsley.
All right, yes, let's begin straight away with Dr. Ibrahim Wada. IVF is fairly commonly well known now.
Yes.
But there are still gaps in the knowledge, public knowledge, as to what it represents, what the success rate is, what the cost is, and there are all kinds of matters surrounding it.
Yes.
What is it that we know at the moment with regard to persons, who seek to patronize clinics for IVF procedures? Is it becoming a common practice, or is it still shrouded in secrecy, and so on and so forth? What is the state of IVF in Nigeria?
In this country? Well, thank you very much. I want to start by appreciating NTA for this effort to keep people informed and to be able to make the right decisions about their health and their life. I'm really, really very impressed. The second thing is the specific topic of barrenness and the application of IVF, what is happening here. I see a country in motion. I see a country, when I came back into the country about 22 years ago, where there was no confidence about that option, the test tube baby, either on religious ground or personal grounds, stigma if you like. I now see a country where this is openly discussed. Everyone seems to be aware that it's relevant. But, and also practitioners have logged onto it, so it's spreading across the country from Oshogbo to Sokoto and Lagos and everywhere. And more patients have understood that you can pray along with this effort to, solve your barren situation using IVF-related techniques and even other medical techniques. So the playground is filled up, maybe 60 known clinics now who are members of the Association for Fertility and Reproductive Health. And so this is a major development where practitioners have brought themselves together as a group to self-regulate and to learn. For example, we have an international conference coming up in Abuja this September, 20th of September to 22nd, and the world is coming to Nigeria from America, Canada, UK, South Africa, name it. We are all gathering to say what's happening in West Africa about IVF, how we're going to improve it. This would not have been possible without a critical number of participants in the country. So it's a major development. It's going to protect the public too, because for you to say you practice IVF in Nigeria, to be recognized and dealt with and have people have confidence in you, you have to have some link to this national association. Our president is Dr. Faye Ketubosun, is in Lagos. The founders of the association are the likes of Professor Giwa Osage, Ashiru, myself, and a few other early practitioners of IVF. So I think that landscape is one that I want to paint first. The second one is, how do people know when they need IVF? How do they not get shortchanged? You could do it naturally or with a little medical help, but you encounter someone who is interested in your pocket and says, you need IVF. Again, the association will help. Your job in this kind of program will help. But I can tell you, as of today, we are working with a group of professors to try and put knowledge in the palms of the affected people in this country, whereby they can assess the level of their infertility, they can know the options available to them, they can read up the options and have question and answer sessions to be able to make a valid choice. You talk about cost, you talk about availability, I see it as motion. Not, even MTN was not cheap overnight when it started. IVF will soon be. Second, government hospitals are coming in. The first amongst them is the National Hospital in Abuja here. They just celebrated their 10-year anniversary, offering IVF at a cheaper rate to Nigerians because, you know, there's wider support. Second of them is the public-private partnership at the Garke Hospital, where they are doing test tube babies. I mean, the first child is almost 2 years old, and many people are accessing IVF through that kind of organ at fairly reduced prices that sometimes I see it, you know, thank God that this option is available to the needy. And this spread of government services, spread of private services will eventually bring the IVF technology within reach of majority of Nigerians.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim Wada. Now, back to Doctor in studio, Dr. Kenneth Eguda. His scientific intervention was initially greeted with so much caution and also show of cost and some other things that were of concern to both patient as well as the medical practitioners. What's your appraisal of the situation today, especially the part of country where you're reaching us from?
Thank you so much. I want to say a very big good morning to Dr. Ibrahim Wada, who was my teacher, my boss and mentor. I was privileged to work with him for 2 to 3 years, 4 years in the NISA Premier Hospital before leaving for further training. I'm sure he'll be happy to see one of his teachers and one of his students doing well in some other part of the country. Yeah, so in Jos, IVF started like 3 years ago. And the first baby delivered by IVF in Jos should be about 3.5 years to 4 years now. And recently, a feat was achieved in Jos at the Gyneville Specialist Hospital, where I personally work. Now we have a 63-year-old woman conceived by IVF after the 4th attempt, and our very first attempt in our facility here in Jos, and delivered a full-term baby, and she's currently doing well, and the baby is also doing well. And from what we have in the history, this makes her the oldest woman to conceive by IVF and have a safe delivery, and mother and child still doing well at this particular point in time. This is one delivery that was greeted and witnessed by a whole lot of people. The Commissioner, Honorable Commissioner of Health was personally there to witness the delivery, and the BBC took part of the delivery. It was recorded in all the media, all the newspaper in the country. And interesting thing about this delivery was that this delivery or conception by IVF of a 63-year-old woman rekindled hope in the hearts of so many people who apparently had given up hope on a possibility of parenting and having babies of their own. You know, we've seen a couple of people coming at the age of 60 and around 60 and wishing they could also have an attempt at IVF, seeing a 63-year-old woman, indigene, conceived by IVF. An interesting thing about the delivery was that it attracted a lot of comments from both local and international practitioners. And the comments and questions that was generated was how ethical it is to make a 63-year-old woman pregnant by assisted reproduction technology, IVF. And what we told them here is that in dealing with people, you know, though the age was quite advanced, you individualize your treatment for every patient. This woman in question, though 63, was in a stable state of health, though hypertensive, but any other person can also be hypertensive. We've seen hypertension in pregnancy in ladies that are just 20 or 30 years old. And so it didn't differentiate it from hypertension in 60 or 63. And also, other investigations that were done for this woman at that age proved that her systems were in a good condition. And so also, antenatal period after conception by IVF was stable, more stable than even young ladies that are younger than that. And her delivery was also very well. So you see, in practice of medicine, in any field, what we consider is actually the ethics, the codes, the moral codes for practice. You know, we have 4 pillars in the ethics of medicine, and one of them is autonomy. Every individual has a right to reach out to what he thinks will be beneficial to him. And for this woman in question, or the couple in question, their desire was they should have a baby of their own. That's their lifetime desire. And I could remember in one of the corridors in the hospital after taking the delivery of this woman, the husband looked at me and made an emotional statement that, you mean at this age I can actually be called the father of a baby? You know, it was quite touchy, and I had to avoid him for emotional reasons too. And so for them, that was a desire, and that was autonomy for them, and they had the right to take it. We also look at another pillar as benevolence. And one of our reasons for making treatment available is that they wish to do good to all patients. The treatment wasn't intended to do harm to her. What would have been good for her is to have a baby of her own, and she got the baby that she so desired. You know, and also truthfulness, veracity is also part of the pillars of the ethics of medicine. This we also put in assessing this woman. And I still remember working with my teacher, my boss, Dr. Ibrahim Wada. He stood for truthfulness, veracity. I learned all that from him. And working with him actually taught me that there is no need for deception in anything I have to do. And I think I learned that ethics of practice even before knowing much about it from Dr. Ibrahim Wada himself. Is a very humble man, a man with integrity and practice medicine in the highest standard that is obtainable in any part of the world. So part of all these things were put in assessing this woman. And when we discovered that she was in a good state of health, we proceeded with treatment for this woman. Her age was not particularly striking to me because it didn't bother me that we're treating a 63-year-old woman until a colleague from Leeds, London, called me and mentioned that, Ken, do you know you're actually incubating history in IVF in Africa? I just looked closely and discovered that, yes, this would be the oldest to conceive by IVF in Nigeria, 63-year-old in Jos. And that put Jos in a very good light. According to the Minister and Commissioner of Health, that Jos is not just going to be known for all the bad things that have been in the media. Jos is going to be known for excellence in medicine, excellence in assisted reproduction technology, and we're looking forward to having even health and medical tourism, Nigeria in Jos. So those were some of the questions that were raised. And from the public, we see that they were wondering whether a woman at 63 years after delivering could breastfeed her baby, you know, and she breastfeeding commenced the next day after she had a delivery by cesarean section. And a lot of people from other parts of the country are also called to find out whether the information was true. She was actually supposed to be sitting beside me in the studio, but the information came a little bit late. We couldn't reach her. She would have been here to greet Nigeria and to show Nigeria the wonders and the beauty of assisted reproduction technology.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Guda. If we could actually measure the joyometer, if I could use that word, of your teacher here, you'll see it reaching the temple itself. Yes. Now, that's one proud student, and I'm sure there are other practitioners too actually looking into other areas. You talked already about quacks and also some other persons who want to take advantage of the vulnerability of these people seeking. So are such concerns alongside other concerns with IVF program or procedure being handled by practitioners in the country?
Right. I think that the major effort we've made as practitioners, originals if you like, is coming together as a body to work with all arms of government. The executive, because they have the power to regulate, the legislature, who will, you know, put through the bill. I want to mention at this point and honor the person of the chairman of the Senate Committee on Health, right? And I think distinguished Senator Tejosho. He is working with passion to see that practice of IVF or assisted reproduction is regulated properly. The association is cooperating with him, and we've been at the House of Rep too, where they have the open hearing, public hearing, if you like. So we recognize these arms, even the judiciary that will mete out punishment when there's problem. So our association has rejigged herself to make sure that there are few people within our ranks who take undue advantage. I am grateful to the likes of Dr. Kenneth, who's recognized that things can be done the right way. You don't have to cheat to make it.
And there's no age limit to what you can do coming to break.
In terms of the age limits that he's mentioned, to be honest with you, the ethics override. You have to treat the patient as an individual. Of course, there's a higher chance of abnormalities like Down syndrome and all that, but we are lucky in this case she escaped it. So yes, the quackery is not in terms of age effects. That's not what we're saying. It's instrumentation, enough training to be able to offer good to humanity. Many people are not patient enough like him. He's patient. Dr. Sunday Onu, you've seen, very patient. Many like that too. They took their time to learn and then increased further whatever knowledge they got from a genuine source. But many people are not like that too. And that's where the problem is coming.
Well, Dr. Ibrahim, that's but some persons who have approached, clinics for IVF, they always report back that a first attempt may not be successful. Why do you need multiple attempts to have a successful implant?
I think many of us will say that life belongs to God, not the doctors you've seen. That all the doctors are trying to do is plant the seed of life, the embryo, into a womb. However they acquire that embryo, whatever the age and other factors, they put it in the soil of the womb, and like any other farmer who's planting in the soil, your hands are raised to the Almighty God to help. What are the responsibilities of the doctors and scientists? To create those conditions that don't weaken success, to be able to give optimum standards that this plantation will yield a harvest. I think that's the main thing. So age matters. Many of our people, even if they are aware, they may not have the resources to approach IVF early. An age factor also is the society moving towards better education for women and careers, and people marrying necessarily late, beyond the natural limits. So this hardening increases the herd infertility ratio and also reduces the chance of conception naturally or by assisted means. So these are the factors. Also, marrying late means women are prone to developing the likes of fibroids in their womb, the risk of having been operated for one thing or the other, the risk of one infection or the other, and all this, when they pile up, there's a general increase, if you like, to the extent that approximately one out of 6, 1 out of 7 married couples who are desiring to have children will have this challenge. And that's a high number. It translates to something like 3 or 4 million Nigerians at any given time wanting to have a baby, and the menses has come, so they are frustrated by that. Not all of them need IVF, don't get me wrong.
All right. Well, what is the cost factor? I mean, let's say, I mean, for a couple that is desirous of going through this procedure, assisted reproduction process, what is the average cost? The upper limit?
Upper limit will be about $1 million. For the technology, maybe $500,000 for the medication. That's upper limit. But don't forget, we have the likes of the National Hospital, Garke Hospital, that are well below half of that upper limit. You ask for maximum. The minimum will be less than half of what I've just mentioned. Why? Because everything about IVF is not produced in Nigeria as of now. And the variations in the currency affect it just like any other aspect of our economy. We are subject to world economy in that light. And I think people like me should be thinking of solution. What can we do locally at home?
That is what should be considered. Yeah. Also, I know associated with this is your stigma, which is what is about caution to this. How do we see that today?
Today the field is more open. The field of play is more open. People are coming not worried that if anyone knows my baby is IVF, I'm going to be looked down upon. I also tell you as an obstetrician that in those days too, if a woman delivered by cesarean, it also meant she was less than a woman somehow. This one can't deliver naturally. So, and who worries now about cesarean? Not anyone. Similarly, the field of fertility has moved on. People are coming with confidence. They have seen someone whose life has been transformed, like the work by my colleague, Dr. Kenneth Eguda. It's obvious. So why won't you take advantage of it? So I think the stigma issue to me is work in progress still. We need you. We need the media. We need genuine practitioners who are not exploitative to give confidence to people that even though it's only 1 out of 3 chance of conception, those chances are realistic in established centers and that you can take a chance on it.
Okay, well, Dr. Kenneth Eguda, just to return to you again, how does an individual prepare herself, how does a woman, rather, prepare herself for this process? Are there do's and don'ts, before you step into the clinic and then you get this going?
Thank you so much once again. For a woman to prepare herself for this process, first she needs to consult with the gynecologist or a specialist in the field of assisted reproduction technology, where she's going to be evaluated. And as Dr. Ibrahim Wada has rightly mentioned, it's not everyone that comes to the clinic that needs IVF or assisted reproduction technology. She's going to be evaluated by the doctor, the gynecologist in this case, and what she merits, whether it's the IVF or any other form of treatment, is going to be discussed with her. She's going to be counseled. She's going to be told the chances that she has. She's going to be counseled about the medications, about the side effects of the medications, and everything. So she's fully informed, and she's going to be given consent form to sign. Yeah, informed consent to sign. Then if she needs to shed some weight, because the quality of eggs that the women produce is actually affected by the weight, the age of the woman, or other disease conditions. If she needs to shed some weight, she'll be advised on weight losing exercises or dieting to do. If she needs to get off some medications. She'll be given some time to have a washout period of the medications, and her husband also will be evaluated. And if all conditions appear to be okay for that treatment to commence, then she will be commenced on the medications. And at every point in time, she's going to be under the observership of the medical team that is enrolling her for the treatment to make sure everything goes appropriately with her. So those are some of the ways they can actually prepare themselves for the treatment.
All right, Dr. Kenneth Aguda, of course, as always, your former teacher, still your teacher, Dr. Ibrahim Wada. It's always giving you the thumbs up whenever you say a point that triggers some memory in him. So you're a very good ambassador of his. Thank you very much, Dr. Kenneth Aguda, joining us from our Just Network studios. Also, to the guru himself, that's Dr. Ibrahim Wada. A guru is, of course, is a teacher. So, Dr. Ibrahim Wada, thank you very much for your contribution. Short, but of course, obviously, we hope viewers had tremendous benefit from your insights. All right, so that does it now for our second topic on the Good Morning Nigeria. Let's go quickly to the Weather Center to check out